Okay, my review of McCabe and Mrs. Miller from 1971, directed by Robert Altman. The writing based on a novel by Edmund Norton. The screenplay by Altman and Brian McCabe, and two others who are uncredited, Robert Town and Joseph Carvelli. In the cast, in the lead role as John McCabe is Moran Beatty. Constance Miller plays Julie Christie. And then we have the lawyer, William Devine. The Sheehan is played by Renée Auberjonois. There will be a slide. Keith Carradine has a short role as the cowboy. Shelley Duvall as Ida Coyle. These two very familiar faces in Robert Altman's cast for his movies. Michael Murphy plays Sears, and as I say, there will be a slide. Now let's have a quick look at the awards. Nomination for Oscar in an actress leading role for Julie Christie, and there was a BAFTA award for best nomination again for best cinematography by Vilmos Zsigmond. Okay, let's have a quick look at the plot. Altman's described as a bleak western. I think it's set at the turn of the 20th century, maybe the late 1800s, and it carries with it an enviable reputation as a sort of status movie for its time. It's got a certain novelty about its content. It's ditched the typical cowboy romantic feel to a more sort of look at the westerns of the era, and it's basically set in a very small town which is becoming more attractive to business, so it's growing and presents as quite a business opportunity. And this is what happens when Beatty arrives. He's an uneducated gambler, and he drifts into the settlement and becomes its leading citizen after gaining some status in his gambling proficiencies. And then he establishes a whorehouse of sorts for the blossoming trade in men who are coming to the area for work. Shortly after, Julie Christie plays Miller, and she arrives, she again chasing the dollar. She's a very savvy prostitute, and she persuades McCabe to offer his wares to a cleaner establishment with higher prices, with her fronting it as the madam. Unfortunately, the success that follows draws the attention of some unscrupulous developers who try to buy out McCabe, but he is very entrenched in holding on to it, expecting that they will up their offer. And although he's a little nervous, he tends to assume that his word will be final. Unfortunately, the developers are not used to getting any no's. Then they set up him as a target for hired guns, and that's the core of the movie. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, points to consider when doing review. Soundtrack, Leonard Cohen, the songs from Leonard Cohen 1970, they sort of worm in and out of the soundtrack to create a sort of quite an enjoyable sort of passive perception of the landscape, etc. And the songs predominantly focus on relationships with women, and of course I want to highlight a few scenes from the movie as part of this review. Number one, we see McCabe in a poker game. It's not the first one, but he's now become a dealer, so has been recognised as somewhat of a regular, and a man enters the room and challenges him to rebuke the suggestion that he's a gunslinger and a little bit of a sort of drifter, and he handles it with a comical aplomb, which illustrates how well Beattie can do comedy. Next scene here, this is a scene involving Miller and McCabe, and this is when Miller is trying to sell herself. She's just arrived in the town and she wants to join McCabe's operation, which has now involved a whorehouse, and she sells herself formidably with a frank speech about the trials and tribulations of running a whorehouse and how to handle the multitude of problems needing solved on a day-to-day basis by a madame with experience. And she goes through a number of examples of problematic issues surrounding the girls with clients, surrounding the girls together, health issues, lying by the girls, and it's an absolute superb sort of drilling that Miller gives McCabe, whose eyes react in a way that suggests how astonished he is by the delivery, as she is giving him an education, but at the same time suggesting, inferred anyway, that he's incapable of handling all these issues. Now, a point about the direction by Altman. I particularly like the scene where Miller was eating her breakfast, and with McCabe very quiet and attentive, and again she lets McCabe know how she feels about his very cautious approach to business and not wishing to spend any money to invest, and she points out how foolhardy this approach is, and once again the close-up is very significant, how Altman goes right in close, so we get a full picture of Miller's face, and I found it quite impressive. The next scene is a number of scenes that involve McCabe and the two men who've been employed by the mining company to purchase his holdings so that they could basically monopolise the business in the town. And we have a series of discussions where they're firstly, the first one, they make an offer and are rather amazed when McCabe, in his own particularly whimsical way, basically rejects the offer and tries to suggest that if his holdings is worth far more than that. They're quite astonished by this, but they then come back with an improved offer, which he rejects himself. And those two scenes are very reflective of the acting quality of Beattie again, almost comedic with regard to the arrogance that he describes a tale involving the frog and the eagle to try and explain why he feels that their offer is minuscule. And then we have the next scene. Miller in response to the meeting with the company reps, she then, having heard McCabe's account, basically, in fairly strong words, points out the error he has made in turning down the offer due to his naivety with regard to the powerful partners who are basically making the offer. And she suggests that it's likely that he may well have led himself head first into his own demise through the bullet following the employment of assassins. It's very much to the point. And last scene, there's a short scene where McCabe is in his room, and because of his anxiety, he's talking to himself about his life and trying to gee himself up with regard to his self-righteousness and his ability to make shrewd decisions. But behind all this is a fear that these men are going to be coming to get him because he's refused the offer.